Big day for the Indian Navy today as Prime Minister Modi commissioned 3 frontline warships, a destroyer INS Surat, a frigate INS Nilgiri and a submarine INS Vakshir. It's a tribute to India's shipbuilding capabilities and a shot in the sword arm for the Indian Navy, the preeminent naval power in the Indian Ocean region. But while we celebrate these inductions, there are worries as well. Over 2 decades ago, the Indian Navy projected a 30-year submarine building plan which called for 24 submarines to be acquired by 2030. We're just 5 years away from that deadline, but we've inducted just 6 conventional submarines. Now, the Vakshir, which was commissioned today, is the 6th of those 6 submarines. There's no submarine in sight for the next couple of years. How serious is this crisis in India's conventional submarine arm? Joining me are 2 of the Indian Navy's most respected submariners, Vice Admiral K.N. Sushil and Rear Admiral Monty Khanna. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thanks, good to be here.
Thank you very much.
Admiral Sushil, I want to start by asking you this. 24 submarines projected over 2 decades ago, but we've still only got half a dozen. How serious is this crisis and how does it really impact on our force planning and naval strategy?
The numbers speak for themselves. So there is nothing much to elaborate. The situation is really bad. The 30-year submarine program, building program, is actually called National Competence in Submarine Building.
Right.
It's a CCS approved paper which says that we should have this force level. And the background to which was that we had already started acquisitions of the 877 EKMs, etc., way back, and they would have been phased out by this year. Most of the submarines which we are running, except for the Scorpions, are more than 30 years old.
Right.
In fact, I just visited Shalki, which I commissioned. It's 32 years old now. And things are going on like this. It's really a sad state. And submarines are the force which any navy should have.
Yes, absolutely.
We really lag behind.
Where submarines are the force that any navy should have, given the persistent surveillance and drone and missile threats in the oceans today. But, Admiral Khanna, submarines are really important, but they also take a long time to build. Now, I was just looking at the projected figures for the next submarines that would come into the Indian Navy. That's at least 6 to 7 years away. Are we looking at another lost decade for the submarine arm, where you've seen these lost decades in the past when 10 years have gone by, you've not acquired new submarines, your existing fleet is aging, as Admiral Sushil mentioned. They have an average life of over 25 years. That's very close to their decommissioning dates. What measures can we consider in the interim to make sure that we have a fully effective underwater arm, at least in the conventional submarine arm?
You mentioned, 6 to 7 years. I would say that's quite optimistic. I mean, and insofar as new submarines coming in, even if it takes you another couple of years to place a contract, be it additional Scorpions or be it 75 India, another 6 years after that. So I would say at least, it's 8-9 years before the next new boat can be inducted. So you have to look at some, I would say, innovative ways of addressing the submarine gap. Life extension is one. So I think for the SSK fleet, that is for the 209s, that program is already underway.
Right.
So I see these boats serving well into 4.5 decades at least, for 45 years of service. And if the hull is in good shape, I think that can be managed. The bigger challenge will be the EKMs, because I think that is going to be a bit of a challenge to sort of support the fleet. So as it is, out of our 10 boats, we are left with, if I'm not mistaken, we've lost Raksha. Veer has gone and Sindhudwaj has been decommissioned. So we are left with 7 right now. So from these 7, the initial plan was for life extensions in Russia, etc. That I think has become a bit of a non-starter because of the, the war that is going on there. And because of the challenges, because of sanctions of, ferrying submarines over there to Russian yards, how do you ferry it? How do you get it back? So I would say at least out of these 7, if you can look at 3-4 of them, in Indian yards getting a life extension for maybe another 10 years, at least they can take on the training load, at least they can keep on, the art alive, etc. So if out of these 7, you identify the 3-4 best boats and you keep them going for the next 10 years or so, and you plus more 4 more SSKs. So you're looking at 4 plus 3 to 4, another 7-8 boats, and plus the 6 scorpions. So you add them, you've got a fleet of around 13. Not an ideal solution, but an interim solution until you get your act together and the new induction stuff.
And an interim solution indeed. But Admiral Sushil, you're looking at other technologies that have come in the last decade or so, like underwater drones, like UUVs, for instance. Could UUVs be inducted in large numbers in a very short span of time, and could they kind of complement the submarine arm? I mean, one is not arguing for a replacement of manned submarines. They can't be a replacement for crewed submarines in the near future at least. But can these technologies be inducted in large numbers to make up for this shortfall?
These technologies surely can be inducted if it is possible to induct them. I mean, we've been playing around with submarine technologies for so many years. Now we are saying suddenly that, okay, we have UUVs and so on and so forth, capable of almost enhancing the role or augmenting the roles of submarines and,
Yes.
to ease up on the force levels. But think back. The submarine, as it is an underwater platform.
Yes.
It's very difficult to communicate with. It's a standalone platform which goes in for a mission, and everything depends on the command. Now, if you want to do UUVs for long distance operations, surveillance of various other coasts and
Yes.
so on and so forth, then you're looking at a totally different set of technologies to sort of allow you to operate in that level. Do we have those technologies with us? You see that for the nuclear submarines itself, we just commissioned the VLF stations.
Yes.
We are not sure about what the other communication capabilities will be. So these are the other things which we need to put into place before we think of UUVs and so on and so forth.
Right.
Yes, technologies are good, provided we can really deploy them.
Right. So there is an ecosystem that needs to be created to ensure that they have compatibility with the existing thing. That's the point that you're making, Admiral Sushil. Admiral Sushil, I'm looking at the Arihan class production line, which the Prime Minister mentioned today in his speech. Now that line has come to an end, it looks like. There are 2 platforms in service, the Arihan and the Arigat. A third one is on sea trials, and a 4th has been launched, which means that the line has come to an end. Is there a case for continuing this production line to say, build a new class of Arihan class submarines armed with cruise missiles, for instance, like the hypersonic missile that we've just tested a few weeks back? Possible new configuration of a hypersonic missile armed underwater destroyer.
No, these are questions which on the face of it seem very obvious, that yes, we have a production line, we can continue with that and so on and so forth.
Right.
But remember that when the Arihan program was initiated, there were certain observations made at that time, and we decided that we should go for a different class of SSBNs, which is supposed to have been the S5 series.
Right.
Which would have been totally different in terms of technology, in terms of various other systems which are to be deployed. Now we have not reached that level, and we are saying, okay, we have a thing going, let's continue with it. Will the SSBN, like the Arihan, be capable, will be able to fire, cruise missiles and so on? It is possible. But we are looking at, deployability, availability. Are these technologies really good enough to operate at, beyond our immediate shores, right across, say, to the South China Seas and so on and so forth? How much can we deploy them? Are they technically capable to sustain that sort of deployment? Therefore, how many do we require? So these are questions which need to parallelly be asked if you're saying that, okay, let's continue this line. The whole argument of S5 was this line has fallen short a bit.
Right. But, to repurpose this line, instead of going for SSBNs, you go in for SSGNs, which are not strategic submarines. These could be used by the naval fleet. They could accompany carrier battle groups. They could carry out independent strike missions like, say, destroyers, but of course, underwater destroyers.
Yeah, you see, if you look at the Arihan, the load which they could carry was 12 missiles. Maybe if you change it into, say, a guided missile, maybe it could increase to I don't know how many, 16 probably, because four tubes, four missiles each, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So 16 missiles. I mean, we are talking about the normal post level of a Delhi class or something like that, which carries these 16 or 20 BrahMos type of missile.
Yes.
Next comes the what range is this missile, is the SSGN going to give you? Are we going looking at the BrahMos type of missiles? Are we going to look at some other longer range missiles? If there is a distant comparison to the Ohio class,
Yes.
then we are nowhere. But yes, okay, we have an SSGN, we could launch 200, 300 kilometers. Okay, that's one option.
Right. It is an option that can be considered, a possible fallback option. But Admiral Khanna, I'm going to come back to you to the original point that you were making about whether UUVs can be inducted as a stopgap measure pending the induction of conventional submarines.
Yeah, so I would tend to agree that a lot can be done in the unmanned space. And being unmanned, when you're not catering for human beings on board, you can be much more aggressive in terms of, in your design concept. And therefore, you can fast forward a lot of processes which would take you much longer in designing a manned submarine because safety becomes a critical requirement. So certainly, your design times can be compressed, and that may be a way to move ahead. Of course, there are lots of challenges. Underwater is a difficult domain. Communication challenges are there. But certainly certain at the low-end tasks like surveillance, etc., can be hived off to the unmanned space. And if we make a dedicated effort, there is a lot that is already happening in that space, but I think a little more attention would at least part of the mission sets can be hived off, and so that you have a smaller set of mission sets for the manned.
Right, absolutely. A smaller set of missions for the manned submarines. But Admiral Khanna, also this question about whether it is possible to repurpose the Arihan line to create possibly a new class of cruise missile submarines for the conventional fleet.
So, what is happening globally is that if you ask me, there is a slight, I would say, the gap or between a strategic submarine and an attack submarine or SSB and an SN is sort of diminishing. You have, of course, some, if you out of the 18 Ohios, 4 were, of course, made into SSGNs, but that was a definitive program. Right. They're not adaptable. I mean, you made a one-time change. I think each of those Trident D5 missiles can carry 7 Tomahawk missiles. So it's a large amount of 200 plus missiles that you can carry in 18 tubes. I think 16 of which have been, or 24 tubes, out of which 22 have been. But now there is also talk of prompt conventional strike, where they're saying you can have some of these strategic submarines carrying conventional warheads or tactical nuclear warheads.
Yes.
If you see the tube diameter of the Virginia class and the new Virginia Block 5, they're going to have tube diameters which are identical to that of the Ohio. So technically, I mean, they may not say it, but technically, you can sort of shift around these weapons by putting a Trident D5 into a Virginia payload module, I think, which is going to carry 8 tubes or something like that in its center mass. So I would tend to agree that moving ahead, it's not that easy to achieve, because even there will be lots of technical hurdles that have to be overcome. That maybe a merger where you decide the weapon fit that you want to put on a platform. Whether you want to put a tactical weapon fit, or whether you want to put a strategic weapon fit, or whether you want to put a mixed weapon.
Yes.
So it gives you a lot more flexibility once you have a platform at sea as to how you're going to utilize that platform. Of course, there are command and control issues. Of course, who's going to take control, but that can be decided. You can firewall it that once she has a strategic role, then SFC takes over.
Yes.
When she doesn't have a strategic role, she comes back to the operational commander, and this ability to move from one to the other, I think, would give a lot more flexibility moving ahead.
Right, a lot more flexibility moving ahead. Admiral Sushil, but there is this conundrum which I've discussed with a former defense minister, the late Manohar Parrikar as well, where he said, I don't understand this, that we've mastered nuclear submarine building with the Arihan line, but we are struggling for conventional submarines. Is that a fair understanding of the situation that we are in today?
the answer to that is that how did we master the Arihan line? That should be honestly answered. Then we get the answer to the other ones. Essentially, why haven't we been able to design and build a conventional submarine? I mean, that's the crux of the question.
Yes.
If you can build a nuclear submarine, there is no reason why you can't build a conventional submarine. So the answer to that is to honestly say whether do we really have this capability? I mean, if you answer that question honestly, then you can find something. What I'm trying to say is that we are a navy which had the best of opportunities.
Yes.
We started with the Russian submarines. We
Yes.
got the German submarine design. We got 877 EKMs, and we
Yes.
got Scorpions, and we got the Arihant, and we had a look at Chakra and so on and so forth. But yet we seem to be struggling.
Yes.
If you take a chapter out of the surface navy, what did the surface navy do, and why are they building ships so well?
Yes.
For the first and foremost thing, they standardized the hull steel.
Yes.
We have gone nowhere as long as pressure hull steel is concerned.
Yes.
Once we start with that problem and we make the building blocks which make the submarine, that means the platform systems, that means
Yes.
the pressure hull, the internal systems which make the submarine run, the engines and so on and so forth, then we have solved 85% of the problem. The rest are all modular.
Yes.
Weapon systems, communications, etc. can go anytime, and they can be changed in technologies. They can be adopted anywhere. But we have not started the building blocks. That is the crux of the problem.
That's the crux of the problem indeed. Big day for the Indian Navy today. 3 combatants joined the Indian Navy. The first time in the history of the Indian Navy you've had 3 principal surface combatants and of course 1 submarine joining us. But there is a crisis within the Indian Navy's submarine arm, and we were just talking with our experts who've told us what the problem is and the tough questions that need to be asked. Thank you very much for joining us, Admiral Sushil, Admiral Monte Khanna.